Willa of the Wood, Chapter 10. Before she went home, there was one more thing she had to do. When the Jedders went out thieving each night, they usually went out in small groups to keep an eye on one another, a rule the Padawan had established long before she was born. Nothing in the clan was ever done alone, but more and more she'd been sneaking out by herself, and the other Jedders didn't like it. They often lay in wait for her return. She looked around at the surrounding forest to make sure she was alone, then went over to the watcher, the tree wedged upside down in the gorge. She grabbed onto the lowest branches and started climbing, wincing from the pain in her shoulder. She knew that the movement of climbing might tear open the wound that the lake had soothed and begun to heal, but she had no choice. She scaled the branches hand over hand, following the tree all the way up until she came to a large oblong hole that had been dug into the trunk. Looking down inside the cavity, she saw the tiny, shapely, angled faces of 5 baby, pileated woodpeckers looking up at her. "How are you this morning, my little ones?" she whispered. But it was a careless mistake. As soon as she said hello, all the babies started squawking and cackling, excited to see her. "Shh, shh, shh," she whispered. "Just soft now. Don't give me away. I need you to hold on to something for me." As she pulled the satchel off her shoulder, the mother woodpecker came flying in with a burst of black and white feathers and clung to the trunk of the tree with her powerful claws. Willa was startled to see that something had happened to her since she saw her last. The area around her left eye was bleeding, and her wing was badly bent, crumpled close to her body. It was a wonder she could fly at all. "Come here," Willa said, clinging to the tree with her legs as she reached out and took the crow-sized bird into her hands. "Let me look at you." The woodpecker knew she was trying to help her and did not fight her or try to fly away. A tangle of fibrous twine had wrapped tightly around the wing and body of the bird, biting cruelly into her skin and binding her movements. But as Willa investigated more closely, she could see that it wasn't just bits of string. It was pieces of a net of some kind. "Oh my, who did this to you?" Willa said as she carefully unwrapped the bird's wing from the twisted fragments. It would have taken days to kill her, but the woodpecker would not have survived this, nor would her starving babies. "You must have fought very hard to get out of this net," Willa said, the woodpecker watching her with its rapidly blinking eyes as she worked. "There you go. You're all clear now. I hope you feel better." The woodpecker bobbed its head, then tended to her babies. Why would someone be using a net in the forest, Willa wondered. Is this some kind of cruel new weapon or trap the dayfolk are using? Knowing that she needed to get back to what she'd come for, Willa scanned the area below her one last time to make sure no one was watching. Then she stuffed her satchel into the cavity with the baby woodpeckers, careful not to block them or hurt them in any way. "I know it's crowded in here," she told the little ones, "but I'll be back for it very soon. Don't worry." Hiding valuables in trees was a trick she and her sister had learned from playing games with the ravens years before. But Willa was pleased with her cleverness. Even the mighty ravens wouldn't think of using an occupied woodpecker hole as a hiding spot. What she was bringing back to the lair in her satchel was a good take, something she should be proud of. But she knew she was too tired to defend it from Gredick and her other Jedder rivals. As she climbed down the tree and the sunlight peeked into the gorge, her gut tightened with worry. If the sun was already in the ravine, that means it was late in the morning. The Padawan was going to be angry that she'd been gone all night and then she wasn't at the morning gathering. The other Jedders would come looking for her, sensing her weakness. She had to get back to the lair as soon as she possibly could. "What are you doing?" came a hissing voice from behind her as soon as she stepped foot on the ground. The quills on the back of Willa's neck went straight up as she spun around to defend herself. 4 Jedders surrounded her with their long sticks. "Don't try to get away, Willa," Gredick hissed in the English words, the only language he knew, as he shoved her hard against the rocky wall of the ravine. Years before, she and Gredick had been initiated into the Jedders at the same time, but he was a year older than her and at least 6 inches taller than her now, with clawed, grasping fingers and slimy, mottled gray skin. Like most of the Farron of her clan, Gredick's skin didn't change color to match his surroundings. Blending, or weaving as her mama called it, was a fading remnant of the past that had been dying out of the clan. Her mother, father, sister, and mama had it. And she had it. It ran strong in families, but few of the other Farron had the ability, and the young Jedders of her clan never let her forget how different she was from the rest of them. "Look at her, she's going all stony brown," Gredick's twin brother chided her as he pushed her head against the stone. "Let's make her face change color too." His name was Sidurg, and he was the largest and most brutal of the Jedders. The crooked nose and crushed cheekbones of Sidurg's mangled face were remnants of the savage fight the years before that defeated his brother's rival and put Gredig in charge of the Jedders. But it was the nasty Kiernan and his brother Ninrek who scared Willa the most. "I think you're frightening her," Kiernan rasped in snarling, fidgeting pleasure from behind the other two Jedders as he wiped his nose with the back of his gnarled hand. Kiernan and his brother were sniveling creatures with black, needy eyes that oozed in a sticky sap-like substance. Fascinated with everything Gredig did, they liked to watch, whether he was pulling off the wings of a sparrow or pinning Willa against a rock and making her twist in pain. Willa squirmed and tried to yank away, but Gredig gripped her arms with his clenching hands. It had always frustrated her that he was so much stronger than her. "Where's your satchel, Willa?" he hissed, leaning his face so close to her that his foul-smelling breath crept into her nose like leeches. Yes, yes, where's your satchel?" Kiernan rasped from behind him, always repeating Gredig's words. "Are you scared, Willa?" Gredig whispered into her face. "Can you feel your heart beating and your blood pumping?" "Let's take her blood," Kiernan shrieked. "She's already bleeding," Sidurg said, jabbing his stick at the wound on her back as his brother held her. Gredig wrenched her around by the arm and looked at her. "You're hurt?" he said in surprise, his eyes narrowing at her suspiciously. "The little beastie is hurt," Kiernan hissed. When Gredig dug his probing fingers into the bloody wound, it sent sharp bolts of pain roiling through her back. She tried to squirm away from him, but he gripped her arm even tighter and shook her. "Where did you go, Willa? Tell me." "Leave me alone," she said as she tried to pull away from him. But he held her tight, and his voice went quiet as he pushed against her. "What did you do, Willa?" he whispered. "What are you hiding?" Gredig was far smarter than the other Jedders, and she could hear the fear seeping into his voice. He often used his anger as his power, shouting at her and the other Jedders to get what he wanted. But just as often, he was kind to her, almost gentle with her when he felt sorry for her, or was helping her when his power was secure. But his kindness vanished when he thought she was slipping away from him in some way, or getting an edge on him. He knew that this wound from a different place meant that wherever she had gone that night, whatever she had done it without him. And this he would not allow. She and Gredig had gone through the starving nights and beating blows of the Jedder initiation together, and in the years since the Jedders went out thieving, he had made sure the two of them were in the same group. There is no I, only we. Gredig yanked her around to face him again and pressed her back against the wall with a harsh shove. "Tell me what you did," he demanded again, crushing her with his weight as he slipped his long, bony hands tightly around her neck.